It's 7:30 in the evening across India. I am Tanvi Taneja. Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Global, bringing you the day's big stories from across India and the world. Joining me from Washington, D.C. is my colleague Nick Harper. Nick, hello.
Good morning, Tanvi. It's 9 a.m. here in Washington, D.C. and 3 in the afternoon across Central Europe. Coming up in the next 30 minutes. The US Senate fails in its bid to provide more aid to Ukraine and Israel. And is it regulation time for the world of cryptocurrencies? We've got a look at the issues at play. But first, the headlines.
UN Chief Antonio Guterres invokes Article 99 of the UN Charter to warn the Security Council of a global threat from the Gaza conflict. Israel slams Guterres for invoking the article as it pushes its offensive in the south. US President Joe Biden pleads with Republicans for a fresh infusion of military aid for Ukraine. Kremlin accuses the White House of demonizing Russia to win over Congress. And Greece and Turkey agree to reboot their relations, establish a roadmap designed to usher in a new era of ties.
We want to turn the Aegean into a sea of peace and cooperation. As Turkey, Greece, we want to set an example to the whole world with the mutual steps we will take.
First news of the Israel-Hamas conflict. The Israeli army released footage on Thursday showing airstrikes on Hamas emerging from a tunnel shaft in Khan Yunis. Israel said it killed a number of gunmen in southern Gaza's largest city, Khan Yunis, including 2 terrorists who emerged firing from this tunnel a day after Israeli troops entered the heart of the city to neutralize Hamas terrorists. Meanwhile, government spokesperson Elon Levy said that Israel is targeting Hamas, not civilians.
We target Hamas, we do not target civilians, and we've been doing everything possible to get civilians out of harm's way while we go after the terror monsters who perpetrated the October 7th massacre.
DD India's Sarah Coates joins us live from Tel Aviv now. Sarah, is there any realistic hope of a fresh truce anytime soon between Hamas and Israel in the Gaza Strip?
Hello there, Tanvi. Well, look, that is yet to be seen. Israel continues to say day after day that it will continue this war on Hamas until it is wiped off the face of the earth. Now, we have heard from Antonio Guterres, the UN Secretary General, over the last 24 hours. He's invoked this Article 99. This hasn't happened since 1989. And look, it is the most powerful, independent diplomatic tool there for Guterres. And he will take it to the Security Council. But look, this needs support also from the United States. And it says that it will not support any further Security Council action. So look, at this hour, it doesn't seem as though there will be any hope of, some sort of a ceasefire anytime soon. But look, this is what's really being pushed by the international community and, of course, the United States. So we've just heard in the last hour or so that due to a US push that Israel has now decided it will open the Kerem Shalom crossing. This is a tri-border crossing with Gaza, Egypt and also Israel. But look, it won't be used to actually bring these aid trucks into the Gaza Strip. It'll be used to instead inspect these trucks to sort of speed up that process a little more there, Tanvi.
OK. Sarah, what does the presence of so many tunnels in Gaza mean as regards to the possibility of an early end to the fighting?
Well, look, this is where the head of Hamas inside the Gaza Strip, Yahya Sinwar, is believed to be hiding. Right now, the IDF says it's completely encircled his home in Khan Yunis. But of course, he isn't expected to be home. He's expected to be hiding in one of these tunnels that you mentioned. Now, he is Israel's most wanted man, and Israel says it will hunt him down and will kill him. Now, with regards to these tunnels, there was a report a few days ago that was saying that Israel was potentially contemplating flooding these tunnels with seawater from the Mediterranean. Israel hasn't denied that, saying it could be a plan. But of course, this poses a grave threat potentially to these 138 hostages that do still remain inside the Gaza Strip. Their families say that they are very worried that instead of potentially flushing out these Hamas fighters, that it would instead flush out or drown their loved ones. So look, this is certainly, as I said, concerning for these people who are still without word on the welfare, the whereabouts of their loved ones. And there's also intense pressure continuing to build on the Netanyahu government to do more to get these people out. Tanvi.
Yes. Sarah, UN chief has invoked Article 99 of the UN Charter, which is actually, raising alarm, and it's warning the Security Council of this global security threat from this conflict. What are going to be the repercussions of this rare move by the United Nations?
Well, look, as I said, he will call the Security Council up a little later this week, but it will need the support of the United States, which has continued to say that it won't support any more Security Council measures. There's a lot of condemnation, though, Tanvi, here in Israel. We've heard from the Foreign Minister, Eli Cohen. He says that Guterres is clearly on the side of Hamas. We've also heard from the UN representative to Israel saying that this is clearly a danger, Guterres, she's talking about, to world peace. So, look, this doesn't seem like it will go anywhere. That, of course, could change. But there is simply a lot of pressure on Israel for a ceasefire to end its hostilities inside the Gaza Strip. But as I said, Israel says it simply won't be doing that while Hamas poses a threat, because we do need to remember that this group continues to say that this was just a rehearsal. October 7 was just a rehearsal, and it will continue these attacks on Israel.
Thank you, Sarah. Sarah Coates joining us from Tel Aviv. Now, about 800 high school students from across Israel travelled to Tel Aviv on Thursday to decorate Minars on the eve of Hanukkah in honour of the hostages still held in Gaza. With markers, glitter and spray paint, the students wrote and designed messages on the wooden stars of David. Still, a world effort on to to get the hostages out of captivity from Hamas. Now let's shift our attention to the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Now, US President Joe Biden asked Republicans on Wednesday for a fresh supply of military aid for Kiev. In response, the Kremlin accused Biden of demonizing Russia to get more money from Congress in order to keep the war going in Ukraine. My colleague Nick Harper is in Washington, D.C. He gives us more on this and other stories making news around the world.
Thanks, Tanvi. US President Joe Biden has pleaded with Republicans for a fresh infusion of military aid for Ukraine. Biden warned that Putin should not win, and a victory for Russia over Ukraine would leave Moscow in a position to attack NATO allies.
Well, Congress, Republicans in Congress are willing to give Putin the greatest gift he could hope for and abandon our global leadership, not just Ukraine, but beyond that. We've all seen the brutality that Putin has inflicted on Ukraine, invading another country, trying to subjugate his neighbors to his iron rule. If Putin takes Ukraine, he won't stop there. It's important to see the long run here. He's going to keep going. He's made that pretty clear. If Putin attacks a NATO ally, if he keeps going, and then he attacks a NATO ally, well, we've committed as a NATO member that we defend every inch of NATO territory.
Reacting to Biden's remarks, the Kremlin accused the White House of playing the Russian threat card in order to secure money from Congress. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said the US president wanted to continue burning taxpayers' money in the furnace of war. He also accused the White House of demonizing Russia and added that if Washington stops backing Ukraine, all other Western countries would also turn away from it. The US Senate blocked a bill on Wednesday that would have provided security assistance for both Ukraine and Israel. The bill was to provide about $50 billion in new security assistance for Ukraine, as well as money for humanitarian and economic aid for the government in Kiev, plus $14 billion for Israel to combat Hamas in Gaza. As 49 votes were in favour and 51 against, it fell short of the 60 votes required in the 100-member Senate for a debate, threatening Biden's push to provide new aid before the end of 2023. In a high-profile trial in New York City last month, former FTX CEO Sam Bankman-Fried was convicted of fraud and money laundering. This case, along with others, has spurred discussions on regulating digital currencies. DD India's Sally Patterson reports from New York.
Loom Studios in Manhattan showcases a wealth of digital art. NFTs, or non-fungible tokens, saw a bull run in 2021 and 2022. But mirroring the rise and dramatic fall of cryptocurrency, the NFT market crashed. But that hasn't dampened artists' creative spirits.
Digital art has never really been in decline in 2023. The artists are still creating. The community is still growing. The artists are using this technology. I mean, the digital is just a new technology, the same way as a brush to paint was a technology, or as a camera to take photographs.
Digital curators here say trading on the blockchain will pick up speed in the coming years.
There's a lot of misinformation about it. There's such bad press that gives, I think, a negative light, but it really is the future of art transaction, and I really believe that for all digital art, it's the safest way and you also know where it's going, how it's been sent.
Trust in the whole sector took a major hit in 2023. The high-profile court case of Sam Bankman-Fried, once dubbed the crypto king, brought the industry into disrepute. In November, he was convicted of 7 counts of fraud and conspiracy at a Manhattan courthouse for stealing billions of dollars of customers' money. That same month, Binance chief Changpeng Zhao pleaded guilty to breaking anti-money laundering laws as part of a $4.3 billion settlement with the US government. US lawmakers are trying to get a handle on crypto crime to protect consumers. Treasury officials say crypto companies could be cut off if they fail to contain and report illicit money flows. It's a challenge politicians around the world are grappling with. In March, the Indian federal government said the country's money laundering laws will also apply to trade in cryptocurrencies. It's a careful balance of implementing regulations while not driving investment overseas.
We are still in crypto 1.0. Like the web and the dot-com boom in the 90s, there were a lot of vulnerabilities. People were hacking websites. You could have gotten your credit card information stolen if you were buying on e-commerce sites in the 90s. It's a similar thing here. There needs to be multiple iterations of security and layers so that we don't have the DeFi hacks and all these things that are happening. There's still a lot of things that are up in the air, but over time, as the technology advances, it'll get much safer.
There's optimism that with the right safeguards in place, 2024 could set the digital market back on track. Sally Patterson in New York, reporting for DD India.
Leaders of G7 countries are planning to implement a ban on Russian diamonds from next month in a move to choke Moscow of resources to continue its war campaign in Ukraine. The G7 made the commitment during a virtual meeting hosted by Japan on Wednesday. DD India's Chris Gilbert reports from Tokyo.
Well, from next month, G7 countries will be implementing a goal that they had set way back at the G7 Leaders Summit here in Japan back in May, targeting the global trade of Russian diamonds as it looks to choke Moscow of the resources it needs to continue its long-running war campaign in Ukraine. And that's what it's doing. It is looking at choking off the capacity for Russia to, first of all, extract its mineral resources, and then secondly, target countries or try and pressure third countries to restrict them or prevent them from importing Russian diamonds. This may well involve Russia's BRICS partners, particularly India, Brazil, and South Africa. Joe Biden, the US president, even said at the Leaders Summit in May that the US wanted to hunt out and hold account any country which may be supporting Russia to continue its war efforts, in a veiled reference to both Iran and North Korea. For Japan, it is also contributing an extra $4.5 billion in financial and humanitarian aid to Ukraine. $4.5 billion is quite a large package, considering that previous packages from Japan have come in the hundreds of millions of dollars. And this is usually geared towards disaster relief, reconstruction, supporting the power grid, which has been battered in Ukraine, and also supporting Ukraine's neighbors, such as Poland, with humanitarian assistance for the refugees that are entering the country from Ukraine as well. It's a very important time for Japan in particular. Political scientists here in Tokyo have been telling me that this last year has been Japan's opportunity on the world stage as the host of the G7 summits and the chair of the G7 itself. It's not going to have that chance again for another 7 years. It's been Japan's chance to put the Indo-Pacific in the spotlight and on the agenda. The focus is very likely going to go to the issues of European and North American countries at G7 summits for the next few years.
Differences between the European Union and China overshadowed a summit on Thursday between their leaders in Beijing. It's the first time that they've met in person for 4 years because of COVID-19. But the public comments from the two sides do suggest that they are at least trying to get along. DD India's Andrew Wood reports.
Well, the agenda of talks between President Xi Jinping and the presidents of the European Council, the European Commission, and also the European Union's Foreign Affairs representative. They could have spoken about a lot of things, anything from the war in Ukraine to what's going on in Israel and Gaza, artificial intelligence, trade relations, and so on. But not much has actually been released to the public on what they did talk about. There have been a lot of nice words said to each other, a lot of talk of reciprocation and mutual respect and cooperation and so on, and of their economies working together better, that the economies were complementary between the European Union and China. President Xi Jinping himself said that China and Europe should not view each other as rivals just because the systems were different.
China and the European Union should be partners in mutual beneficial cooperation, continuously enhancing political mutual trust, build strategic consensus, consolidate ties of interest, eliminate all kind of interference, and strengthen dialogues and cooperation for the benefits of the two peoples. We should jointly tackle global challenges and work together to promote world stability and prosperity.
Nothing particularly concrete. And to a certain extent, that was to be expected. Both sides have been playing down the possibility of a breakthrough at these talks. Certainly the European Union a couple of days ago, some of the senior officials were saying they didn't expect anything concrete as a result of these talks. China did want to raise the issue of European Union investigations into alleged subsidies in the electric vehicle industry, and the European Union said it was going to raise human rights issues, especially what's going on in the west of China, where Uyghur Muslims are said to be being treated badly. But otherwise, at least the two sides are talking. It's the first time that they've all been together in person to talk, so I suppose that's some progress. In Hong Kong, I'm Andrew Wood, reporting for DD India.
British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has urged the Conservative Party to unite behind his plan to deport asylum seekers to Rwanda, warning colleagues that if he tightened the terms any further, the entire plan may fall apart. Sunak is facing the biggest challenge to his year-long tenure as he tries to stop lawmakers on the Conservative Party's right wing from rebelling over their demand that Britain should quit international treaties and set their own migration policy.
We have to recognise that as a matter of law. And if we didn't, we'd undermine the treaty we've just signed with Rwanda. As the Rwandans themselves have made clear, if we go any further, the entire scheme will collapse. And there is no point having a bill with nowhere to send people to.
Former UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson faced a second day of questioning over the UK's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Johnson asserted that any suggestion he wanted to allow the virus to let rip was completely wrong. On his first day of questioning, Johnson apologised for his handling of the pandemic, saying his government vastly underestimated the risks posed by the virus. The pandemic killed more than 230,000 people in Britain.
At the time that the Eat Out to Help Out policy was being aired with me for the first time, it did not seem, it was not presented to me as an acceleration, simply something to make sense of the freedoms that we were already giving, and it was not. I must emphasise, it was not at the time presented to me as something that would add to the budget of risk.
That's it from me. Tanvi, back to you in the studio.
Thank you, Nick. Nick Harper joining us from Washington, D.C. Still to come on DD India Global. India's Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman says India's second quarter growth has been the highest in the world. And emergency declared in Seychelles after a huge explosion at an industrial zone on the main island of Mahé.
What's behind China's mysterious wave of pneumonia that has gripped an unusually high number of children? And should the world be worried? Get your answers on Connecting the Dots at 8 p.m. IST every Friday on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Global. I am Tanvi Taneja. Once historic foes, now allies. Greece and Turkey formalized their commitment to fostering amicable neighbourly relations by signing a joint declaration today. Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan engaged in discussions with Greek Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis in Athens on Thursday, marking a significant visit aimed at rejuvenating relations between the two nations following a period of tension. Additionally, both parties agreed to elevate bilateral trade to $10 billion with a shared goal of further enhancing positive momentum in their ties.
We want to turn the Aegean into a sea of peace and cooperation. As Turkey, Greece, we want to set an example to the whole world with the mutual steps we will take. I am saying this openly. There is no problem between us that cannot be solved.
Next, updates from the Parliament of India. On the fourth day of the winter session of Indian Parliament, the Central Universities Amendment Bill 2023 was passed in the lower house. In the upper house, short-duration discussion on the economic situation in the country was taken up. India's Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman said that India's second quarter growth has been the highest in the world, while other developed economies contracted. Speaking in India's upper house, the minister said that manufacturing have shown expansion for the last 29 consecutive months.
The Purchasing Managers Index in November 23 was 56, which is in the expansionary territory. Now, PMI has been in the expansionary territory for more than 29 consecutive months. So the sustained growth of manufacturing is very indicated by that. Now again, a comparison for the manufacturing sector is comparatively, if you're looking at the major economies, including that of the United States of America, Australia, Eurozone, Brazil, China, and South Korea, they have seen a contractionary manufacturing PMI.
India's External Affairs Ministry today gave an update on the case of former Indian Navy personnel who have been sentenced to death in Qatar. External Affairs Ministry spokesperson said that there have been 2 hearings so far in the case and the next hearing will be conducted soon.
There have been 2 hearings. As you know, we filed an appeal, as is from the families, and the detainees had filed an appeal. 2 hearings have since been held. One, I think, on the November 30th. The other was on November 23rd. I think the next hearing is coming up soon. We are closely following the matter and extending all legal and consular assistance. Meanwhile, our ambassador got consular access to meet all 8 of, in prison on 3rd of December. And as I said, this is a sensitive issue, but we will continue to follow, and whatever we can share, we will do so.
The ongoing COP28 session in Dubai, which has been addressing climate concerns, is witnessing numerous activists as NGOs advocating for urgent climate actions and fundings. Their calls include advocating for more robust emission reduction targets, increased financial aid for developing nations, replenishing the loss and damage fund, and facilitating a just transition to a low-carbon economy. And now we take a look at other stories making news around the world. A state of emergency has been declared in the Seychelles after a huge explosion at an industrial zone on the main island of Mahé. The blast shook the island as heavy rains triggered flooding, killing 3 people and displacing several more. Train drivers at Germany's national railway, Deutsche Bahn, are on strike from Thursday to Friday, according to the GDL trade union, which represents the drivers. The strike will affect long-distance and regional trains, as well as commuter trains in the cities of Berlin and Hamburg. And Harry Potter fans will now get an immersive experience of the Wizarding World with a new interactive exhibition which premieres in the German city of Cologne on December the 8th. And the Sarajevo Festival of Lights has illuminated the Botanical Garden of the National Museum in Bosnia for the first time. The festival features an exhibition comprised of light installations showcasing Bosnia's cultural and natural heritage. That's it in this edition of DD India Global. Do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. Connect with us on Facebook, X, formerly Twitter, and Instagram at DD India Live. You can also find us online at ddindia.co.in. We will be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Tanvi Taneja. From my entire team in New Delhi, thank you for watching. Namaskar.